Hey there, Sloane from Ethical Capital. Another one in our series of me answering questions from clients and prospects and other folks in our communities. This one is one that we get a lot. Is it ethical to invest in real estate? Now, if you've ever had a landlord, you likely have opinions about the ethics of those that, you know, invest in real estate. Some would say hoard real estate and charge others rent in order to live in it, right? And you probably also are aware of the reality that in many cases people are paying amounts in rent that they wouldn't be able to get approved for mortgages for, right? So there's fundamental issues of access to capital and equity that are at play in the way that we provision housing in the United States in particular. Now, in a lot of senses, this is because of a policy error, in my view. In the United States, we have basically created a set of policies that make it so that housing is the largest asset in many families, right? I'm actually coming to you from, many people know this, an office that is a house that's been in my family for 130-ish years, right? So when you hear stories like that, it's very intuitive for people to go and say, oh, wow, obviously housing has some investment implications, right? And it has some generational wealth implications, in the ability to, pass on the ability, being able to like live and sleep indoors to somebody, hundreds of years down the line. That's really cool. And access to it is a big reason, a big driver of why I'm able to build this firm, right? Because I have this nice privilege. But from an investment standpoint, like most things, it's kind of a gray area, right? Because real estate, first of all, is a massive, massive investment category. It comprises everything from, data centers and warehouses and retail facilities to multifamily, things and homes and office buildings. And yeah, there's a marijuana growing specific investment trust. We have some investments in a company that builds and operates lab space for biotechnology companies. It's very, very nuanced. And in particular, though, the thing that a lot of people have front of mind is residential real estate, because in part there are some stories about large investment firms buying up many, many, many single family homes across the country, basically competing people out who would have been long-term residents and turning it into kind of a nice profit generation opportunity for them. That to me is not particularly ethical. But there are ways to invest in real estate that are, right? And in general, what I'm thinking about, is this ethical? Is this not ethical? I'm looking first for bright line reasons that something is bad, right? And that could be anything from, a company has a tendency to build massive tracts of McMansions that have no thought given to the underlying community. Or it could be, practices in kicking people out, or it could be, any number of things. I hesitate to make exhaustive, descriptions of things that are bad, because companies have always found new and exciting ways to disappoint me. And so when I do that, I just wind up in a weird headspace. But anyway, how would it be ethical to invest in housing? Well, the way that we do it, I think that operating lab space for companies that are bringing innovative new therapies onto market that will produce really, kind of significant results, I think that's pretty ethical. I also think it's a pretty solid investment opportunity because, I don't know if you've ever been around an R&D lab or in biotech, but it's not exactly the kind of place that you can work from home at. So, it's a category of offices that are relatively insulated, I think, at least, from, this ongoing malaise in the commercial property sector. We also own a company that likes to build and develop mixed-use neighborhoods that include offices, commercial space, residential, and other amenities. And that's an approach that I like a lot. In part because a lot of communities have spaces, whether, in a lot of cases it's waterfronts, or something like that, that are effectively blighted because they've been, they had an activity, maybe they had a big shipping center there, back in the 1900s, and now they're not as competitive as a port. And so we still have all this infrastructure, but we don't have anything happening there. Often in that case, you need a real estate developer to come in and say, all right, let's do a thing with this. And obviously there are all sorts of ways that things can be done, right? This being the world that we live in. So, what I particularly like about, the developer that we own now is that they will develop the whole neighborhood in collaboration with the community, and then, kind of retain parts of it for long time periods. And often, they'll, opportunistically, when people are willing to pay high prices for them, they'll sell like the retail portion of this thing that they built and hold on to the office portion or something like that, where they remain existentially committed to the property of the community. They exercise solid investment discipline about the value of the assets and the way that they can, kind of think about those assets and use them to generate more, good things for shareholders, but they're not doing it from a standpoint of how do we squeeze as much money as we can out of these plebes who have to pay us rent every month. And so I think, like, in terms of real estate, specifically, like, it is a cursed topic. If anyone is looking for, some reading on the subject, I recommend this book by Sam Stein, which has really shaped my thinking about it. Excellent, very tightly reasoned book, where he talks about the policy decisions that have kind of gone into making real estate an investment asset rather than like where we live, right, or a community asset, which would be, another way of thinking about it. And I just want to underscore that the way we do things in the United States is not the only way to do things, right? In Germany, for instance, pretty much nobody owns a home. They do some other things unusually, right? Like, you'll rent an apartment and it'll come without a kitchen. But every culture has its nuances. And I think the American fetish for building wealth through home ownership, backed up through policy, backed up through incentives and all sorts of things, certainly was good, I guess, for, the GIs returning from World War II who were able to buy homes and build generational wealth. Obviously, large issues of equity and access attached to that. If you know anything about that period, people of color and all sorts of other folks, and God forbid, a non-traditional household would have had a hard time accessing that. And so, part of the way that I think about this stuff in terms of whether it makes sense in our portfolio is, I have to navigate these gray areas on our client's behalf. We do our best to do it rigorously. But part of the reason we're doing this video series is because we want to invite questions back in, because that is the best way for us to expose our thinking to scrutiny, right? Like explaining what you think, putting it out there on the internet, and then, if we're wrong, I'm sure someone will tell us. So I would really love it if you would, comment below with anything that you think is relevant to the housing question. Feel free to ask a sub question or ask me to drill on another point, or feel free to tell me I'm a dum-dum and explain why. But whatever's on your mind, I just want you to know that you can write to us at our email, hello@ethicic.com, and we'll give you an answer, and we'll do our best to make a video about it so that other people can learn from your curiosity. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, and sending good vibes your way from Utah.